I chose this piece of jewelry that belonged to, or was created by my father, Dan Simplicio Sr., in 1945. It's also been a very featured piece of jewelry, well recognized in a number of different publications. And but I don't think most people really understand what went in also to the helping of this design as well too. It was, it was created in 1945, soon after World War II. That my father participated in World War II as well too, and I was talking earlier about the fact that he got wounded in World War II. Wounded in the leg, which actually made him go through a long rehabilitation for his recovery on his leg, and consequently it restricted a lot of mobility of Dan at the time, and one of that understanding is his mobility and how he was able to get around, or being in a very sedentary kind of condition. But that being very sedentary also allowed him to really sit and work on details for a long time. And to me, that's what's very reflective in this piece as well too. Just a number of tiny little elements that are in here that required an extensive amount of time to sit down and actually work on this piece. But that's what he had. He had a lot of time because he couldn't really move around and do other things too. And I think that's also reflective in his other creations as well too. I think after his mobility came back later on, he was doing other types of designs that were really reflective of that. I can see that. But going back to this one, just so much detail goes into, I guess, having that kind of mobility, because some of these drops that he had placed in here are all handmade drops that he did. He would actually get small pieces of silver, melt that down, and it'll shape itself into a round ball. And while it's still hot, he would take a little poker or prod and touch them, and to make the designs on it, imprint the design on it while it's still in a very flexible melted state. So you would get this effect of some of these drop pieces and have those types of nugget-like silver nugget impressions. And then after it cooled off, he would solder them into this design. And there's a whole number of them too. And actually it's a very busy design. There's just so number of different elements that are in there as well too. And one of the other noticeable element that's in there are some of these coral branches that have a like a brace around them, or that has been placed across it. And that brace is actually because of some of the weak areas on the coral itself, and also to keep that secure in its place. And that's the use of that little band. As you can see, it's not really strategically placed or designed, but only in some areas that he has put that on there. And again, that's really indicative of where a break might occur or may have already done, and that was an element to cover that part of it too. And it reminds me of a story. That we have in our family, where our dad was working on a bracelet, a large bracelet that had a big piece of coral in it, and we're all ready, and as soon as he finished his piece, we were all supposed to go into Gallup and sell his jewelry, and then we go shopping or we do whatever we needed to do. He was working on this piece there, and he was almost finished with it. He was in the buffing stages of it, and as he was doing it, one of the coral branches broke and just cracked. He got very upset. you know, and we kind of knew that. I mean, his military background was always ever present in our household, and we would do anything and say anything if we knew that his voice started to raise. And sure enough, that he did that day, and he was quite upset that that broke. And actually, he really demonstrated that. He got really mad. He got really mad. He grabbed his bracelet after it broke, and he threw it against the wall. Very upset, and it was a tapestry of cuss words that he let out. And we were all standing there scared. And I mean, he just told us to. Well, we were all actually in the other room. He told us to come into his workshop. He told us to. We heard when we actually saw what happened and heard him as well. And so he told us to come into the workshop, and told us to line up in there. There was about 6 of us kids, and my mother was still getting ready and stuff, and told us to stand in a line and just wait for him. He was angrily putting everything away and grabbed some of the other pieces that he did finished, and we all were looking towards that broken piece of jewelry he threw on the wall, and we're all afraid of what he was going to do or say.